So we have started this Coffee with Achievers in an idea to provide guidance for you along with the inspiration and motivation. So you need not worry about and you need not dig upon more on how to find the path and how to find the starting point. So here our guest speakers will give you a clear idea on how to start with, and then you'll be able to create your own path for your career. So in this, you have a chance to interact and meet successful people. If else you have any doubt, you can clear on the spot. You need not worry. You can ask anything related to startup. Sir can clearly give you a few insights about it. So let me introduce our guest, Ayush Nigam sir. He is the CEO of Distinct Horizon. So Distinct Horizon is an agri-tech startup which helps people and like someone like farmers to double their profits. So you can see a tool here. So this is patented by Distinct Origin. This tool helps farmers place fertilizers deep into the soil using urea deep placement technique, thereby reducing the use of fertilizers by around 30 to 40%, and it rapidly increases the crop productivity too. So this agriculture technology makes farmers much more sustainable by significantly reducing effects on climate change, water pollution, solid soil degradation, while reducing chemical inputs in farming. You can clearly see the problems they were addressing, and you can clearly understand how many awards they have got for the Distinct Origin. So you are all lucky to have Ayush Nigam sir here. So hi sir,
Hi, Prajna.
how are you doing sir?
Good, good, good. How are you?
Yes, I am fine. So, like, how did you feel when we told you this initiative, sir?
It's wonderful, actually. I think it's a good opportunity for the students and many more kind of enterprising people, I would say, who are willing to come out and create value for the society in many different ways. So, of course, like here, as we are doing something in the agri sector, but there are so many more needs in the society that need to be kind of filled by such enterprising people. So I think there are a lot of such talent in India, especially seeing the rise in entrepreneurship recently. So I think this is something that is very good. Had I kind of had more exposure earlier on when I was, say, a student or something, I think it would have been great starting much earlier than I had actually. So I think it's great to have these interactions. Yeah, I think this is a very good
Thank you, sir.
initiative.
Thank you, sir. So, like, how did the idea started, sir, for the startup?
Right. So basically, I have always been very passionate about creating a large impact in the society. So since I was 10 years old, I wanted to kind of somehow, when I grow up, like I wanted to solve a lot of the injustice in the society, the suffering that we see around us, right? So essentially, that's where my motivation had always come from. Now later, I did BTech in IIT Madras from in mechanical engineering. So had a lot of exposure, luckily, through my college, got to kind of meet a lot of people. Also understood like the rural economy as the root cause of a lot of that desperate urban migration that's happening there. So while I was at college meeting a lot of people, I think that was one of the biggest takeaways that I got. So having gotten that takeaway that we really need to strengthen the rural economy is where the further journey began. Now, after completing my BTech, I realized I need a little more management experience before setting up my startup. Having gone back, I might have actually rather changed my approach. I would rather have preferred to work in a startup and then set up my own startup, to be honest. But the journey that I took was I started in an investment banking firm and then shifted to strategy consulting. So after doing this investment banking and strategy consulting, then started my startup. However, I think it would have been better if I had done a startup. I would have worked in a startup first. So this is how the whole background led into kind of identifying what we are doing. But after that, when we got serious into it, so we kind of formed the team. We did very thorough research. So we went across the country, met thousands of farmers. We met a lot of experts across the country. And so finally, when we met this person, Mr. BB Singh, he was the head new business development at Tata Chemicals, a very senior officer there. So he actually enlightened us, I would say, because he gave us this idea that just by fixing the fertilizer problem today, we can have a massive impact not just on one thing but on multiple things, and that too it's extremely scalable. So this was a very good opportunity that we saw. Why I am saying that is with this particular technique, if we can scale this for farmers, but it was very difficult technique for the farmers to do. As you just, Prajna, you nicely mentioned the technique of urea deep placement or fertilizer deep placement. Now, this technique was researched by very prominent scientists. I met Dr. M.S. Swaminathan like 1.5 years ago. So he was very excited that we are now trying to propagate this technique. So he and many other prominent scientists across the world were trying to spread this across the world. So basically the world had failed almost because it was a very difficult practice to do. So that's where we saw our role in the whole picture, that scientists have played their role. And that's where we come in as engineers and entrepreneurs to try to solve the technology problem in adoption of this technique and make it scalable. Okay. So that's where the journey began, and we were very inspired by the potential impact that we could have, and yeah, that got us motivated.
Great background work done, sir. Really. So, how is the initial stages, sir? In the stages of product development, how did it go? Like,
right. So initially we did face quite a lot of challenges. In fact, I would say for the first 3.5 years were very challenging. It was a chicken and egg problem. Developing a product and raising money are both like both want to be first, right? Like, because if you develop a technology do you kind of are you successful in raising money in many cases, and it is vice versa also, right? Like, so essentially that chicken and egg problem got us stuck for quite some time. So that's one. However, we were a very passionate team, so we did pull through. We did develop a lot of different versions. Now, a very interesting thing happened there. So we were listening to the scientists on exactly how this needs to be done. And the scientists told us like a very complicated way of developing this technology to make it work on the farms, right? But what happened is we developed it after 8 iterations of the machine. Now that was a hell lot of work, right? And finally, when we reach out to the farmer, when it finally works on the field, then the farmer says, no way I'm going to allow this machine on the field. Okay, so between my planted rows, so between my planted crops, right? So what happened is before that we were talking to farmers, but they never imagined it that okay, this machine kind of actually potentially damaging their crops. And now when we take it to their farms, they are not ready at all, right? Like many of them are not ready. So that's where we realized that this is not going to work. So we had to kind of come back. Of course, it was a very sad moment for us. However, luckily, we could partner with some of the very, very good organizations, including Tata Chemicals and IDEO. So IDEO is the world's best design company. So they're based out of US. Now, so in 2018, IDEO team came down to India. We worked together because they found this technology as a very promising technology, right? So they came down to India, worked with us, and that's where our whole design perspective changed completely. What we understood is that the people-centric design is a very, very critical element when you're designing something, right? You have to keep your end customer in mind very, very closely. You can't have any gap there. And that changed our perspective completely. We redesigned our machine to something very different. And after getting these inputs from Tata Chemicals and IDEO, we designed a very different product. It was very successful after that. So just to give you a brief background. So basically, by the end of 2018, we were ready with our so successful product that we could kind of take out to the market and actually test out on the real fields with the farmers, with different institutions, etc. So that's where we were. And so 31st December, we had a great party because finally we managed to achieve our deadline of 31st December 2018. So that was a great celebration for us. Now, the important part there was, that's where we really got excited that now we are ready to create a massive impact. Because we were seeing three massive things, right? One is we were almost seeing doubling of profits, both in paddy farming and many other farms as well. On the other hand, for the government, it was a huge win because like just with one machine, which costs roughly 1.2 to 1.5 lakhs, depends on where we are, we can actually save 18 lakh rupees for the government in urea subsidy saving. The government is wasting a lot of money in urea subsidy today. And that's where like the prime minister and like a lot of the top level people in agri ministry, fertilizer ministry are daily having these conversations. How do we reduce fertilizer consumption in India? And that too with a very feasible method and a scalable method. So that's where they found our technology as one of the most promising ways to be able to do that. So that's where the ministry also contacted us. We had like top level meetings. So that was a great push for us. So we saw that, okay, this is going somewhere, right? So right after that. And the third thing that we understood very soon was that our technology, the kind of price point that we are achieving, the kind of the speed that we had with the machine, we are able to become 5 times more cost effective than solar panels in reducing climate change. Now, we all know that that is huge because today we all know that climate change is a very, very urgent problem, right? And we need to do something about it. On the other hand, there are all these big institutions across the world, which are kind of pouring in money into solar panels to be able to kind of offset that climate change. But this technology is way better than that. And that is what I think really stands out in the global context as well. And so, yeah, this is a much better alternative to solving climate change to quite some extent, and also give many other benefits to the consumers, to the farmers, to the environment at large. Yeah.
Very nice, sir. There are too many ups and downs you have seen, but yeah, now you are contributing to the climate and to the farmers. It's really good to know. So, are there any other experiences while you're going through all these ups and downs? Like, how is your mindset and what is the experiences you are facing? How did you put yourself up motivated?
Right. I think, yeah, that's a very interesting point because, of course, like having gone through the different versions, and it was actually the initial part was extremely challenging. So just to kind of give you an idea, the kind of constraints that we had on our machine were such that they were like extremely difficult. So first of all, paddy fields, rice fields can be up to 1 feet deep of mud slush, right? And you have to make a machine move. Now, based on the constraints that the scientists had given us, we had to design on very thin wheels because we couldn't have wide wheels. We had to design on a very low engine capacity because we could not increase the machine's weight. So there were like very strong constraints from a mechanical engineering perspective. And so as a result, what happened is every time we would try out something new and go down to the field after 4 months of very hard work and struggle, and it would just not move in those conditions, right? So it was so frustrating for us. But the whole team, because of the passion that we had in actually creating that impact, I think that is what kept us going. So very honestly, if the passion had not been there to create impact, we would have given up years ago. So and that's not just for me, right? Like it's also for the team. So we all were actually passionate about the impact that we can have. So we were trying again and again and again, and went through like 6 iterations where we absolutely had zero output. It would just not move, right? Like in those conditions, and it was like really disappointing. Yeah, and of course, like finally partnering with the right organizations, getting support from the Indian government and the US government in funding as well. I think these were the turning points for us in 2018. So I think the government supporting us and IDEO and Tata Chemicals, I think redefining our whole situation and being much closer to farmers. By the way, so in 2018, we also had another interesting turn. So we got these farmers where we were kind of trying out our initial pilot. We got a few farmers from that village into our R&D team. So basically, right now, our team is actually 50% farmers in R&D and 50% engineers. So we are that clear that the farmers have to be involved. So I think it is true with any sector that we go into. Being very close to your customer while you're developing a product is extremely important. I think we learned it the hard way. So yeah.
Yes,
It's
it's
quite
nice.
interesting. I mean, it is quite interesting having farmers in your R&D team. So this
Yes.
is the right place to start. Well, I see one question I had to ask. How difficult it was being a mechanical engineer into agri-tech before you getting funding, because anyhow you are making a product, right? So how difficult it was to start as a, from mechanical engineer to agriculture field? Second, how it was difficult without getting funding when you started your journey?
Right. So, from mechanical engineering to agricultural engineering, product design, for example, now that was not a major challenge for us because we all were kind of already involved with either like a lot of us, as in not me particularly, but we had team members who were involved in Baha, and Baha was great support. I think like those guys had a lot of knowledge, and I think that's why I respect a lot of students who are actually going through that experience, because as mechanical engineers, to be honest, I have a very direct thought process that engineers who have gone through that, mechanical engineers particularly who have gone through that process, are the best. That is what I feel, straight up, because they have the passion and the experience of doing stuff like that. So I think for us it was good because we had people like that with us in our team. Now moving on to the second thing, without the money initially. So what happened is very soon we did get one round of funding from a US organization, and so they did fund us close to 32 lakhs. And so we thought like it's a lot of money, like we'll make 5 products out of this, like why just one, right? Like we were really confident. And so what happened is like 1.5 years went by, and we did design 5 machines, by the way, but they were all of the same thing, right? Like we failed 5 times. So the good part there was that we were extremely conservative on spending cash. So we could go through 5 iterations. So we did have hope that we will be able to pull through ki some iteration will work, right? Like, but unfortunately, none of those iterations worked. And after that, we actually had to put in a lot of money. Now that was my personal thing. I know that scares a lot of people, that I don't want to kind of put in my family's money, etc. And I had to do that. I had to put in my old jobs, whatever I had earned, and then my family also helped me. My parents were extremely supportive. So thanks to them, like we continued. But I would say the kind of journey that we took up because of the product constraints, as I said earlier, I think that is what led to such complicated design that we had to go through so many iterations. Had it been something else, I think we would have not struggled so much with that chicken and egg problem. Yeah.
Nice. So listening that mechanical Baha people, I guess our students will feel some energy. So we have more mechanical people there from Baha itself. It's nice. So how are your collaborations? How did they go? And what's your go-to-market strategy, sir?
Right. So basically, for us, so as I said, like 31st December 2018, we had kind of the first product that we are actually confident with to take out and scale in the market. So basically, after that in 2019, what we felt is we want to test this out, like in all different conditions. So we started going out, and so the first trial I remember, so I was there in Tamil Nadu in a village and all, trying to get some support, some farmers to adopt my machine, like our machine, and try it out, right? Like, and then we kind of scale from there. So that was a really tough thing to do. And so we got those people to try our machine. Then we did a similar thing in UP. And now these 2 trials happened somehow by putting in a lot of effort. But what we had learned again the hard way was that we should not try to do these things ourselves, right? We can keep trying to go to every different place and try to demonstrate these technologies to different farmers, because to be honest, like a new technology is not going to be adopted very fast, especially very, very different technology like ours, because we are changing the agricultural practice altogether. So that is where we need to kind of provide these demonstrations. So that is true. However, we cannot afford to do those on our own and go around the country. So that is what we realized was a mistake. So very soon, by the summer of 2019, we partnered with very good organizations. So basically, we have partnered with Tata Trust, Dr. Reddy's Foundation, Syngenta Foundation, some of the best organizations in the agri sector. And they are helping us to propagate these technologies, right? So now we also have indirect support from very, very good organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, indirect support from USAID, UKAID, Facebook. Even like we are getting a project from World Bank through state governments and so they are helping us spread across these states. So I think these are the ways that we realize that will actually succeed to spread our technology on a large scale. Because if we are looking at these small things, our vision will actually never come true, right? Like my objective was never to make a small impact. It was always to create a large impact. Now the question that we hit was like, how do we scale? Either we can raise like hundreds of crores of rupees, or we can partner with the best organizations who already have that reach, who have that credibility, and they have those people on the ground, so they can make these things happen. So these things worked out beautifully for us. Beyond that, we also had another actually benefit. Now, as I mentioned, like the government was looking at this as a major potential to reduce the subsidies in India, as in save, not reduce subsidy, but per se save money on those subsidies by altogether reducing the fertilizer usage. So that's where the government actually backed this technology pretty strongly. In fact, they have added this in the mission of the government to propagate agricultural mechanization machines in India. So this was a huge move again for us, right? Like for propagation. Even the Maharashtra government recently selected us to kind of propagate this technology in Maharashtra as well. So a lot of these things are happening. So finally, in a nutshell, because of all this collaborative approach, in this short period, so we are kind of expanding in 6 states right now. We are entering Bangladesh this year as well. We'll be entering 3 more countries in the next year. And so we also collaborated with the National University of Singapore Business School. They helped us in doing a lot of research across the South and Southeast Asia region. So that has also given us much more confidence in terms of the right partnerships and right approaches to enter these countries. So I think a lot of these partnership-based approaches have worked very nice for us.
Very nice go-to-market strategies. It's really nice to have some good background support for us to move forward. It's really happy. And I have seen that you're also taking interns for the company. I've seen the interns. That's really a great initiative. It helps students also to grow more on the particular product or to understand more about it. So how was your experience with the interns?
Oh yes, that was amazing. So actually, to be honest, like when Corona hit, so after a month into Corona, we were still clueless, right? Like I didn't know what to do because there were so many orders in the pipeline, so many partnerships that we had formed, and now they were all busy solving Corona. So so what do we do, right? Like so we were lost in March and we didn't know what to do. Now April started and a few students started contacting me. So it started with these 3 students, and we kind of set up this initial internship sort of program that fine, let's try to research at least. Let's try to identify what more partnerships can we do, how can we expand, let's re-strategize on what we are doing, and we'll see how it goes. We'll get some experts to guide us also and all that. So that's how we started small. But after this, so these 3 interns worked for I think close to 20 days when we realized that okay, the potential is much more. There are so many talented people out there wanting to do great stuff. They're wanting to learn. They're wanting to be a part of it. So that's where we kind of started hiring very aggressively interns. And so by the 14th May, we had hired close to 24 interns or so, and we were still seeing so much more value. By the end of May, or I think, or maybe first week of June, we had close to 40 to 50 interns. And so we had set up almost 20 teams within the company, and with the interns particularly, right? And they were helping us solve all problems of scale, right? Like right from finance to manufacturing to R&D to researching the marketing, like the partners, potential partners, everything. So this was huge for us, and I think like it has completely helped us redefine. Now, just to give you one small example there, in terms of the business development strategy and the partnership strategy, these interns helped us to kind of research on 400 organizations, which have a very good sync with our organization, and there is a great potential partnership there, and it can help us to scale to much more geographies in a very quick manner. So I think it has completely redefined our whole approach.
Great initiative, sir. Like I think all the students have learned a lot and help you improve a bit more for
Oh
that.
yes.
It's
Oh yes.
really nice, sir. So would you suggest how to find a co-founder if you're setting up some startup? Like how do you find the co-founder?
Oh yes, really important, no? Because it's like so many ups and downs in the journey, and you never know what you all have to go through. Like first day, we don't anticipate a lot of these issues, no. So I think very importantly that the three core things that I would say. One is I think like trust is very very important. Because it's a long journey, there are going to be very difficult times, right? So trust. If you don't trust your co-founder, then I think it's very difficult. Number two, I would say like, of course, like complementaritiness is obviously important, right? Like when I am holding, say, for example, the sales and funding and etc. sort of things, then maybe if my co-founder is holding the operations and R&D sort of things, right? Like how can we kind of hold unique things, and we have our unique strengths in different areas. I think complementaritiness is very very important. And the third thing also is like how much do we align on the vision, right? Like how much do our passions really align? So I would say these 3 points would be really important to me in looking for a co-founder.
Nice, nice. Himanshu sir, would you like to?
Yeah, I see. Yeah. In that, finding a co-founder is very interesting context. In context, I mean, many students do ask, "I want to start my startup. Do I need to find a co-founder?" So, what is your perspective of finding a co-founder to start alone? What is your
Mm.
suggestion for students?
Yeah, yeah, it's a very very difficult and interesting question, I would say, because number one, I think it's a very difficult job to find a co-founder, because getting that level of trust and passion, similar passion, and still being complementary, I think is not easy, right? Like so I think on one side it is very very difficult. However, on the other side, it is extremely important, right? Like because if you do not have a co-founder, it's going to be a one man. Ideally, it should still not be. Even if I would say, even if we don't have a co-founder, the team is still a team. Like I don't look at the team as any different from my co-founder, right? It's like the core team can still be like the founding team, which is fine. However, it's always good to have that complementary co-founders holding different positions, so it makes our job much much easier. Definitely better to have one. Yeah.
Can you share the story of finding your co-founder so that maybe students will get some the viewers will get some idea?
Yeah, I think the students would be very happy hearing this, because my co-founder is like my school friend, right? Like so we go back like a long time. So I think we were very very good friends right from class 11, and so we always used to kind of keep discussing that we want to do something like this and all that. So I think it's like a lot of these a lot of groups and friendships that start early on, I think could be a very good combination in terms of creating the companies. And it goes a long way, because in the long run, through all those fights and difficulties that you go through, you having that friendship and that bond at the end of the day really matters. So yeah, I think
Okay.
so for us, yeah, it went back really long. So yeah, it was
Interesting. Very, very, very interesting.
so
So, how do you? Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
very much. So one more point there. So actually, in fact, I also got in my dad. So he retired from the government, and so we got him in as a co-founder as well right after his retirement. And so that was a really great thing for us, because he had retired from the government, a senior officer, and so him having his network etc. was really helpful to us. Now I was fortunate of having such a background in my family, but I can understand that it's not always necessary, right? Like I think that was a great thing for us as well.
So I see there must be conflict between the co-founders, and that is very common in a startup. So how do you manage those conflicts?
Yeah, so yeah, definitely there are a lot of conflicts, right? Like so, yeah, can't go without that. However, for us, I think what we I would say in a way created is that these separate pillars of excellence, right? So we clearly decided that okay, this is my area. Now the final say is mine, and in the other area is your final say. We can talk about all these things, we can discuss about them, but the end say we can kind of distribute. So
Correct.
that is how we kind of did it. So it helped us, yeah, in this matter.
Interesting, very interesting. One very important question many viewers would like to, they ask, and I think they must be having questions. I'm a student right now. How I have an idea. So how to start? What should be my first step? Should I go for a job, or should I directly jump into a startup, or should I work in a startup? What should be my first step? Or either of is fine. So what is your stand on that?
Okay. So I would say definitely, if possible, if financially feasible, etc., focusing on it properly would be good. Even I would say like the ideal time to start is when you are still a student. So there is no point in waiting longer. And I think you should give it a shot and see how it goes. And of course, like every failure teaches you a lot. So I think the earlier, the better, firstly. Secondly, I would say like kind of getting some experience in another startup that is in a growth stage, ideally, right? Like not the struggle phase, because there are multiple phases in a startup. And if you see the growth stage, I think that will really help you to kind of set up your own thing. So I think these two things would be very valuable. Thirdly, another interesting metric that I like to keep with new founders, etc. So we are also setting up some new startups. So in those, the metrics that I like to keep is if I was just coming out of college and I was to take a job versus do this startup. So now if I would take a job, then I would kind of put my salary mostly into kind of running my startup, and I would have like other friends maybe who are kind of maybe devoting full time or not, but potentially I'm using that money as my seed capital in the company. Now another way to look at it would be like, can I raise that amount of capital money, maybe in the form of grants, VC or whatever, within the first year itself? So then I can say financially, as much as I would have kind of earned as a salary, I have kind of got through funding. So then probably financially I have in a way broken even. So if we can raise that much amount as my first salary, I think that itself is a good achievement uh, in the first year.
Yeah.
It can be tough initially.
So one very interesting question I would like: when you left your job and came to startup, how difficult it was? When I also came through that phase. You're getting a lot of money, and when you come to startup, you don't have money to get a salary. So how difficult and how did you manage that one?
Right. So for me, I think it was very easy because my brain just works that way, right? Like I was not happy rather working in that job, even though like money didn't matter
Correct,
to me.
correct.
So for me, because of that reason, I think it has not been difficult at all. Yeah.
So yeah, Prasna, you have anything?
So, like, would you please share some guidance for our students?
Sure. So one thing I think that I would like to share first before kind of getting into a particular aspect that I wanted to share. So first, very, very small thing. In our like with our experience. So what we learned was, I think all these partnerships that I talked about, right? But one interesting thing that I did not mention earlier was that why we were so successful in getting these partnerships in the first place. I think one is, of course, we reached out. We were kind of confident that okay, let's try to reach out and let's see what happens, right? Like, of course, we have to reach out. But beyond that, it was also a few other parameters, and I think the parameters that worked in our favor were two. So one is because the technology had huge impact, right? It had real value. So hence, I would suggest, I would urge the potential founders, future founders here, that find things that create huge impact, that can solve a real need of the society. If you can do that, then you will get a lot of support. And obviously it is also for the social impact also. So both ways, right? You will also get support and the beneficiaries will also be benefited. Now, on the other hand, the second part of why we got that support, according to me, is that because we were constantly thinking big. We were constantly thinking big. We were constantly talking big. And that's where you get these people, the people who are doing big things to support you. Otherwise you will not, right? Like you can't attract the government by talking very small. I am focusing on this these few farmers and that's it, that's what I want to do, right? Government won't show interest. So that's where I think in all the cases we kind of got a lot of benefit by doing these two things. So the other thing that I wanted to share was, I'll just quickly share my screen also. There's just like two slides that I wanted to share here. Yeah, I hope you can see my screen.
We can.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically, as you guys see here, so essentially after going through a lot of ups and downs, we realized that there are these 7 pillars for entrepreneurial success. If you mess up any one of them, then there is a very high likelihood of failure, to be honest. So that's what I feel. So I'll just quickly run through these points. So the first one, as we talked about, was funding, of course. So as in our journey also, unless you kind of raise funds initially, you are bound to have difficulties in coming out to the market. Now, in certain models, of course, it might not be so important, but I would still urge you, even if you have raised money already, keep the process going. Keep fundraising going. I think that is very important. That we learned the hard way, as I said. So money ran out, and then we were left, and we were suddenly, we realized that we have to start fundraising again. But then it takes time to get your next check, right? So it's better to kind of keep the fundraising process going. Now, second point is people. So in no particular order, I'm saying this, okay? So all of them are equally important. I would say rather people are probably the most important in my perspective, but yeah, there are other things also really, really important. Now, people, of course, is very important for us. We are constantly the kind of people who look for leaders, right? So we are looking for people who can kind of open big things, who can think big, right? And who are passionate to create change. But there is also a huge importance of a holistic team. So I'll talk about this concept of a holistic team and what different pillars that I feel go into creating a holistic team. Finally, of course, we all know that culture is really, really important. The people inside the organization need to feel the energy, the creativity, the fun. And even like we go to the extent of saying that we need to be friends before being colleagues, right? So we are not doing work together. We are friends first, and then we are following a passion together, right? So that is how we see things, and essentially compassion and care are really important to us. So we like to focus on people. So people is really important. Now the third element is networking and partnerships. Now this, I'll be very frank in sharing that initially we really messed up on this. So what happened is initially we were developing our product, as I said, we thought that we'll be able to do it very easily. And hence we were just working in our workshop. We were getting support from external vendors, but we were not really interacting with the ecosystem a lot. And that is why we kept making the same mistake and again, right? Like in many ways. And I think had we been going out, networking with more and more people like we do now, very, very aggressively, but that time we did not do that at all. And that is what I think did not help us, like it avoided our growth process. We could have learned, we could have grown much more. Now, the other part about networking and partnerships, as I mentioned, is collaborative growth and a win-win strategy. So now we are very, very clear that whenever we get into any partnership, it has to be win-win on both sides. And we try to discuss that. We try to come up with the win-win solution. We are very particular about that. We are not looking for solutions where the other organization or person is going to lose. Now, be it for a partnership with an organization or be it about hiring a person also, individual also. We want to see how we are going to add value to that person. And only then we see like how that person is adding value to us. So it is both ways. So win-win is very important. Now moving on to the fourth point, the business model and planning. Of course, this is like one of the first points rather, because business model we need to figure out initially before we get into it. But obviously you can modify your business model as well. Now, when I say business model, these 3 points are really critical. One is of course having a bigger market size, a big problem that you're solving, not a small one. Otherwise investors will not support you. The second thing is having a business model, like having clarity on what your business model is. Who is going to give you the money? Who is that customer? And is he really going to give you that money? Have you validated that? What are his concerns, etc.? So validating that business model as well, right? Now, the third point, as I mentioned earlier also, having very high value proposition. So basically, whenever you create something, it needs to create exceptional value to the buyer, to the user. Otherwise, if you're adding very incremental value, I do not think it is worthy enough. So that's where how can you add tremendous value is a very important question. Of course, like in the business model itself, the scalability question also comes into play. It is very important to have a scalable model and not just any business model, right? So now going on to the fifth point of goal setting. So now this is both interesting and very common, but it does not happen very practically. I've seen in most startup, early startup stages, but it is extremely important. What I believe is, like, even if we have no idea of what's going to happen, we are just entering the market, we have absolutely no idea how people are going to respond, we still need to keep some goals every year, every quarter, every month, right? Like, so basically having those time bound goals that we are going to achieve this much in 1 year, even though it may be completely in the air, that is completely fine. And realigning that goal is completely fine. So be agile, be flexible in those goals, but set goals. There is no excuse not to set goals, according to me. And that's where the third thing comes into play. Like, creating the goals at the top level is fine, but you also need to break it down into team specific goals. So how do different teams see that bigger goal and then figure out their own goal and then work towards that? So I think this goal setting funnel is very, very important. Now, coming to the execution focus. Now, two very simple points, very obvious. So number one, we have to get into detailed planning with each team. I did, again, like, this was one of my drawbacks initially when I started, and we did not get into a lot of detailed planning with each team. So there were way too many flaws going on in different areas. And so we learned after certain mistakes that we need to have a lot of these discussions on how are we going to do that execution, and then create a chalk out a plan and use the right tools. So there are a lot of software tools right now which can help you to kind of keep track of your execution. But one tool that I would urge the most strongly is try to check up this Scrum management approach. So basically it's an agile management methodology. And so Scrum is a really good tool that you can use. So agile basically means that you are kind of, it's a very flexible way of management, and it gives the people the empowerment to kind of come up with their ideas, come up with their solutions. With the agile method, you can empower your whole team very strongly and still keep things organized and keep things agile as well. So people are able to make changes quickly. So I think I would urge people, the listeners, to kind of check out the Scrum management approach. Finally, but definitely not the least, I think this is by far the most, like, I think people and rapid evolution, I would say, are the two most important things for me. So what I mean here is that every month, every quarter, we need to have exceptional evolution goals, right? We need to evolve extremely fast. And what I can probably illustrate that by this particular example. So I heard someone in a talk, and he mentioned that in every 3 months, I look at changing I target changing myself so much that the closest people around me need to know me all over again, right? Like how I think, how I do things. So every 3 months, I want to completely redefine myself. And that has been my goal for the last 1 to 1.5 years. And I think this has been amazing. The kind of evolution that we have gone through, like either as individuals or as an organization, I think has been tremendous. Every quarter has been like a complete transformation. So I think this is extremely important. And as long as you are growing, learning, evolving, you're very highly likely to be successful. Now coming to the holistic team perspective point that I was mentioning earlier. So just to I think this is a very important point, because your team people, as I said, are really critical. Now we generally miss out on one or the other, is what I feel, when we start off initially. And I think this is a huge mistake if we do not have these 4 category of people that I have mentioned here. Now leaders, the first one, are generally the founder sort of people, right? Like may not be the founders necessarily, but the founder sort of people with that attitude, who are okay with ambiguity, who are okay in kind of finding the path and showing the path and motivating others to follow. So I think those courageous sort of people, courageous in the dark, right? Like I think those are the typical, the founder sort of people. Now the second category is the big movers. Now big movers I define as generally these very senior people who may be mentors or advisors also, and that is completely fine. However, those people may be full-time, part-time. However, they have to be kind of these support people for you to get these big things moving. Now, say for example, if we have some advisor who is like a senior person in fertilizer industry, for example, or the fertilizer ministry, for example, right? If we have some advisor from there, now that person can help us to kind of move these things at a senior, at a large scale. Now we are constantly on the lookout for these people. In fact, recently our team has been blessed by very senior people coming onto our team. So these big movers are really, really important, either on a full-time or a part-time basis. Anything is fine, but you need to have them to increase your credibility of your word and make things move. The third category, as we can very easily understand, of course, exceptional doers. We need these people who are really good at what they do. It may be something very specific. They may be great at designing, and they may be focusing on that specifically. That's great. You need those people, right? Like, obviously we can understand why. But the fourth category is also very important. Now, these dependable doers are the people who will, no matter what, under any circumstance, will be those people who will stand by you. And they are people who will be ready to do multiple things, not just one or two. And you really need these people, because you can't get these exceptional doers all the time to kind of do all the things, right? Like, you need these dependable people who can wake up at the night, like 2 o'clock at night, and really, if necessary, and support you. So having all these 4 type of people in a team, I think makes a team extremely strong. And I think this would be important from my perspective. So yeah, these are just my thoughts. So yeah, I think these are things that I wanted to share. That's it from my side. So yeah, this is also my LinkedIn ID. If you guys want to connect to me on LinkedIn, that would be great. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, sir. Like,
Thanks,
it was like a clear path and idea on how to find a team and how to start with. So we have more questions about fundraising, sir. So initially, what would you suggest for fundraising?
Okay. So, so of course there are multiple ways to do it. Now, if you are creating something like what we are creating, what we created, of a very high impact sort of a thing, then you have the great opportunity of applying for a lot of grants. So grants are actually really helpful, and many people overlook these things. Why I'm saying that is, everyone talks about investors and VCs and angels and all that, but not a lot of early startups talk about grants. But that's where I think very high impact entrepreneurs have that opportunity to apply for grants, and I think they should actively, constantly keep looking for them. Number one. Number two, very similar to the grant, could also be competitions. So a lot of startups go to competitions, and they have these prize money which help them keep running. Now, even like a 1 lakh, 2 lakh, 5 lakh sort of a prize money for very, very early stage startups is pretty good, and it's kind of good to get the things going, right? So I think those are also good opportunities. However, now coming to the more mainstream sort of things, right? Like, of course, we all know that investors and friends and family and angels, etc., are the most commonly sought after sort of direction. Now, I will like to raise both pros and cons of this. So now, pros, of course, we all know that you can achieve probably the fastest pace by raising money from investors, because they will constantly also help you to raise the next round, right? Because they are invested in the company, and investors typically have a lot of connections or to more investors, to more bigger institutional investors also. So it becomes like a chain, right? So it is a good way to kind of do fundraising and constantly keep growing faster. On the flip side, so to be honest, I did not realize initially. And so we kind of made a mistake there. So we had this huge passion driven startup that we were creating, and we tried to raise money. So we also got a lot of offers from VCs. So we got some 5 offers in early on in 2017 or so, in 2017-18. But what I later realized is that it is like a treadmill. So once you get on the VC route, the investor route, it's not easy to get off. Then you have to raise more and more capital in the VC route. And when you do that, you have to lose more and more control of the company. Now, of course, for most of us, it's fine. But if we are very, very impact driven for entrepreneurs like us, I think there are certain cases where we have like a dilemma. Will this serve, will this partnership really serve in the best interest? Because the control is actually going out to the investor in a lot of ways. So in many ways, we might not be comfortable with. So I'm just raising the particular concern. But as we all know, it is the most common way of raising money. And yes, it's definitely a pretty promising, it does help you to scale up. Of course, on the other hand, you have your friends and family and angels. There are a lot of angel networks also. So you can reach out to the angel networks. They can help you to pitch to like 50 to 100 angels in one go. So I think these angel networks are very, very beautiful to kind of create those opportunities to raise money from more people and get in that capital.
Very nice insight, sir. So there is one interesting question. How can one hire a person who is smarter than you?
Yeah, so I think that is a very challenging question. Like I have still been grappling with that, to be honest. Right. So now it is definitely a challenge, and especially early on if you are financially not very strong. Now, if you do raise good amount of say VC capital, etc., or you have kind of you're making a lot of profit, then definitely it is much easier to raise to kind of hire such people. Now, however, I'll come to the other side. So if you do not have that money, then the approaches that we took to kind of hire such people. So number one, of course, is I think being more liberal with sharing equity, I think is a very good thing. So I think equity share is definitely there. The other thing that you could potentially do if you're looking at a business side, you could also look at sharing profit of whatever business they make in a very liberal manner early on, right? So I think early on, these challenges of getting such good people is definitely a very big challenge. But using maybe these incentives, you can motivate them a little more. And on the other hand, of course, for a startup like us, it's comparatively easier because we have like a huge vision that we are looking at, a huge impact that we are looking at. So definitely being in the high impact sort of a startup, you have the opportunity to influence very, very talented people. So it becomes easier to do that, I feel so.
So there was a question like, what is the main pillar for a startup?
So I would say definitely the people, right? Like number one pillar. Of course, number two could be your product, technology, service, whatever it is. But I would still say the people are more important. And once you have that, you can even pivot, right? Like say a particular model is not working, you can move on to another model. But the people, I think, especially look, it's not just about having those people also. It's about how that group functions together. So as a group, are you able to kind of create that magic? Because it's not about having a group of talented people just sitting in their own spaces. That's not going to create a world-class team. A world-class team is a team which has talent, but is extremely collaborative and functional, and also is looking at very achieving big things together, right? So it is aggressive, is passionate. So I think that is the ideal thing that I would look for. Yeah.
Yes. So how to find such people? They are asking like how to find such people who can stand as a pillar for us.
Right. So I think one thing that has worked beautifully for us is that we have even earlier actually. So we used to work always with a lot of interns, and I think that was a great opportunity for us to see more people. So that was one. The second approach is being extremely flexible while you work with people, right? Now, what I mean by that is, now say for example, there are these some very talented people who are happy with the opportunity that we have, happy with the company that we have. They want to kind of get a part of it, but they are not ready to take the jump. And that is where you need to give them the comfort that don't worry, just try it out, right? Like, so I think that's where being flexible helps. So we being an extremely flexible organization, could actually create many such opportunities for people to try out, and them trying us out also lets us try them out a little more, and then we can see how it works, and then we kind of make it formal and long term.
Great, sir. So what kind of preparation should be completed before going for a funding?
Okay, so of course, like being very, very clear about the business model, creating a good team, and figuring out the big uncertainties of the future. Like what are the potential bottlenecks? So it's not good to just show that it's all great, right? It is good to actually identify your potential risks and then work out alternative strategies to figure out what we can do if those scenarios come into play. So I think having a very clear roadmap will help very strongly. Of course, beyond that, it is good to kind of work through your financials, etc. What is the kind of funds you buy? Why do you need it? So all those things you need to be very thorough. The fifth point that I would say is being very clear about your market. And so what I mean by that is also having validated the market. Can you validate your market in any big or small way? So yeah, so you need to figure out the ways to kind of figure out how to validate your market.
So at the starting phase, how to make connections and network for the startup?
Okay, so in today's world, it is extremely easy, I would say. There are so many events happening, so many things where people are connecting to each other. And of course, like maybe in the Corona scenario, because physically these meetups are not happening, it may be both more difficult or it may also be easier in several other ways. Because you can just sit at home, and if you can participate in a lot of things, I would urge people not just to look at Indian events, Indian activities. I would say open your doors to worldwide activities. And once you start doing that, of course, we all know that Google, Facebook, and Insta, and all these things, LinkedIn, they start throwing us more and more opportunities to learn and interact with people globally. And I think that would open your perspectives very widely. So I think these events give us a very good opportunity to network. I think it is not a difficult time to network in general.
You have really given us so many inputs about the startup, how to form a team, and how to reach out to people and all. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Prajna. Thank you, Himanshu ji. It was really great to kind of have this opportunity and speak to a lot of students and others. And I think, yeah, thank you so much for that. I always love to kind of have these conversations and discussions here.